I'm really excited. It's a sincere pleasure today to introduce you guys to Peter Block if you haven't already heard of him. Peter is a best-selling author of multiple books, including Flawless Consulting, which has been considered the independent Bible for almost 3 decades. Actually, we're 3 lucky winners from today are going to get a copy of this book from our audience. We're going to randomly select them, so good luck to everybody. But Peter is the owner of Design Learning, their training company to help you hone your consulting skills. He's been the recipient of multiple awards, including the American Society for Training and Development Award for Distinguished Contributions, the Association for Quality and Participation President's Award, Training Magazine, HRD's Hall of Fame, and the list just goes on and on. You know, Peter has extensive experience and accolades, as you can see. So let's just say we probably want to listen to what he has to say. I know that I do. I hope you're as excited as I am to gain some of his knowledge and insight. So with this, I'm going to begin to hand it over to Peter, and we'll just have a nice conversation about what Peter specializes in.
Thank you, Sarah.
Sure.
So a couple of contexts. One is thank you for having me. Thanks for listening in. And if you chat in, I'll see them. Sarah will see them. Dana will see them. And so the more I know what you're up to or what was on your mind, the more I can aim my comments to you. You know, I started as in HR personnel. I worked for Exxon. I got out of college. I wanted a job. I was happy to have a job. I wasn't fussy. This was in the 60s. I only got 2 offers, so I took the one that paid the most. Once I got an offer letter, I went out and bought the ugliest bedroom set I've ever seen in my life, just because I could. And so I worked for 10, 15 years, 4 years for Exxon, and then I just did consulting. And our expertise was in organization development. It was a new field. We did team building, we did training, we did sensitivity training. And so I just was making a living as a consultant with a couple of partners. And then somebody came to us at Exxon and says, you know, we're IT specialists, and we do studies, we do analysis, we make recommendations, and half the people don't listen to us. And some engineering people said we do the same thing. We know we're not wrong, we know we're not stupid, but for some reason, half the stuff we suggest, nobody acts on, nobody listens to. Can you help us about that? And then I started getting interested in that, and we ran some workshops, and I started thinking, so what is this thing called consulting skills? Why do people who have great ideas, great expertise, don't have impact? Why don't they make a difference in the world? Why do people give us a hard time? So I wrote the book eventually, and so what I want to kind of highlight today is to answer that question. If you're right, if you're smart, if you have your own firm, it means you know something deeply. There's some domain, whether it's technical or financial or marketing or IT or HR, it doesn't matter. You know something. The question is, how do you make a difference? And sentence number 1 or idea 1 is being right doesn't help. You know, all the way through school, all you had to do was smile at the teacher and guess well. And you know, you can get good grades without learning anything. And the basic message was, know what you're talking about. And then you get out into the world and you realize knowing what you're talking about doesn't help that much. It can be right. So that's what this is about. Thought 2 is the reason being right doesn't help is because you're all working in political systems. Your clients, unless they're individuals, work for a system. They work for an organization. They work for a place that has bosses. They work for a place that's kind of pyramidal in shape. And so even though they may like what you say and who you are, they have a world to deal with. And they have bosses, and everybody complains about their bosses. People these days, 30, 40 years later from when I started, are more afraid of their bosses than they ever were. And so part of the challenge is you say, how do you work with this system? How do you work with this individual in a way that acknowledges they're inside a political system, and when they give you a hard time, it's not about you. So what I want to do as we get into this is to talk a little bit about resistance. But the second, mostly I want to talk about the fact that being right, if it's not enough, being connected is enough. That basically consulting is about connection. It's about relationship. And a lot of times, very technical people think they're not great at that. And so part of the consulting skills of what I want to do in this 50 minutes is to give you a methodology, a set of protocols, a way of thinking about making it explicit how you can manage relationships to be more powerful. And so influence without control, consulting, how do I get my expertise used? That's the notion. I want to skip that slide for a second. And here's what's needed. If you say, well, the relationship is what's decisive, and in my mind, there's no difference between good contracting, good consulting, and good selling. If you have your own firm, it's a hard thing to have your own firm if you're an independent professional. And everybody thinks if I had better brochures, if I had more results, if I was taller, quieter, louder, smarter, quicker, more. So you have all these stories about yourself that basically are irrelevant. That your ability to sell is your ability to connect. And there's kind of four things here. One is because it's a political system, the more authentic you are, the more powerful you are. To behave authentically is to be able to just put into words what you see happen. So people giving you a hard time, I just look them in the eye and say, you give me a hard time. If people seem unable to make a decision, say, well, what's keeping you from deciding what's going on here? And so to be authentic is just to be as much who you are. That basically people purchase the person. The world, the big four consulting firms would have you think they're purchasing a system, a history, a set of results, outcomes. They're not. My own deep belief, after a long experience, is that when people make the purchase decision, the buy decision, they look you in the eye and say, is this somebody I want to work with? Everybody's brochure reads the same way. Everybody's results-minded, outcome-oriented. Everybody's worked in every industry and every vertical or not. So the more authentic I am, I figure they're going to make a decision. Can we connect? Second point is that you have to let the world know what you want from them. It's easy when you're in a service role to bend over and to say, tell me what you want from me. Thank you. I'll do my best. Well, that's incomplete. You say, how do we act as partners? So you say the most powerful way of consulting is to act as a partnership is the role you want. You don't want to be a bare hand. And so you say, well, what's that mean? It means that what I want from you is as important as what you want from me. The third is about resistance. Like I said, don't ever take it personally now. You may be the kind of person that takes everything personally. Save it for after dinner. During the day when people give me a hard time, and they have a lot of ways of doing it, and they're often right, I never take it personally. I just say, aha, what's going on here? I want to find out what's bothering them. So when people give you a hard time, say, what's bothering them? What's going on? And the fourth thing is that people need support. I don't care how tough they are, how business-oriented they are, bottom line. I don't care these days how busy they are. They may be looking at 4 different cell phones, acting as if they're interested in you, and their thumbs are going like crazy. It doesn't matter. You have to tell people, here's what you're doing right in this conversation. So these are kind of principles I think.
Peter, and I can just say, you know, having talked to so many independent consultants just who are maybe going out for the first time, I think sometimes you're so eager to win the business that you don't set clear expectations. You know, I've seen this over and over again. There aren't boundaries. There aren't expectations. You know, can you just do this work before we get the contract sorted out? Can you just do this? Can you just do that? And what you're doing is you're so focused on winning the sale that you're actually devaluing your service as you're doing it and setting the relationship up for failure because there's not good direct communication and strong boundaries and mutual respect. And, you know, I agree that when you enter a relationship like this, it is a relationship and it needs to have good foundation and clear outcomes of what each other is expecting out of the relationship. I think that's a really sound piece of advice that I see a lot of people, particularly when they're trying to get their first client, and when they're trying to land that first client, that I see get overlooked all the time.
Beautiful. See, my notion on a sales call is we're here to make a good decision. I'm not here to get the business. The last people person anybody wants to hire is somebody who's hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I was starting out, I would give on price in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I would give on setting in a minute. I'd rather make $100 a day than stay home broke. But I didn't want to show up in a way that says, I need you, I need this business, give me a break. And it's not that anybody would say that, but they, like you said, Sarah, they become overly conciliatory. Oh yeah, we can do
Yes.
that, we can do that. And the way people know that they can lean on you is your capacity to make demands on them. And
Yes.
so they're using the sales call as a sampling device to see what our future together will look like.
Mm-hmm.
And if I start out bent over, if I start out too hungry or too, oh yeah, that start dictates our future together, and then you're going to have to dig out the hole later.
And then too, like I see people all the time, going down on their rate below market value, and they're working with their first customers who are just trying to get them to get the lowest price possible. And then what happens is they've devalued themselves, and now they've set themselves up too, because if they do a good job, then this client refers them to another client. And once you've already set that price and you say, well, for you, I want to charge this, you already have the reputation of being on the cheap. So it's like kind of hard to get, you want to win that business and get the client whatever they want at a low price, and now you've kind of pigeonholed yourself in that without even realizing it.
Two things. One is you have to assume that every client you have now and for the rest of your life, they will talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I always assume they will find each other and talk to each other. And so my biggest anxiety, other than survival, is not to do bad work. And sometimes you turn work down not because you're fussy. I do windows. I'll take any job. I don't care what it's not that. It's just you turn work down if you think you can't be successful. Because if you're not successful, you've lost 4 clients because I figure they're going to talk to each other and say, yeah, Peter wasn't so great. And so I think that's a big deal. And the thing on pricing, there are times when you lower the price. And one is if you're going to learn something, sometimes in a way by lowering the price and you're trying something new, in a way you're saying, I will help you, if you'll pay me this, I will co-finance this experiment by working at a lower rate, because as long as I can use that anywhere I go, that has real value, and I need clients to pilot things. Clients are my research lab. I'm not rich enough, I'm not rich enough to do my own research. I need clients to try something that I'm not sure is going to work. So I may say, look, I'll work for less, but the point you're making, Sarah, is right. And don't worry about pricing. I think if you underprice yourself, then you're constructing a commodity business for yourself. And I hate it when people call me a vendor. People say, well, yeah, we're looking at other vendors. And I think nothing good is going to happen here, because they think I'm a commodity, which means I've failed to answer the question, what's unique about what you offer? And for the first 10 years, you're going to spend part of every day thinking, what's unique? Everybody is results-oriented. Everybody's quick, and everybody's knows the business. You've got to figure out what's unique. As a tendency when you begin is to do everything. You're hungry, you want to start a business, and you say, oh yeah, I can do that. And so the narrower you are about your gifts, your benefits, the more you're likely to sell. So let me
Peter,
go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt. We did have 2 questions about rate. Did you want to address them now or at the end?
Right now it's cool.
Okay.
Talk about money. I love talking about money.
Yes. Well, these were just relevant to what you were just discussing, about how pricing doesn't matter. It's about, in the context of how you were saying that. So we had some kind of more granular questions that were,
Right.
talking about if you were to offer, sometimes you do have to offer a lower rate. There's times when that's appropriate, right? So if in the case of that, would you show your normal rate on the invoice and then stipulate a discounted rate in the parameters of that discount?
I would.
Okay.
I didn't do them any favor. See, I don't want to position myself as a price-sensitive service, because consulting, if you're an individual, you're not a commodity. You're not making it on volume. Now, someday when you have 30 people working for you, you might do that. But if you're one or two or three people, I don't want to present myself as if I'm doing you a favor by giving you this discount. The only reason to do that is to remind myself what my rate is. But I wouldn't worry about the rate because you're worried about growing your business. And so it just has a commodity feeling to me. I gave you a 10% discount. So what do I do with that? I'm grateful. I don't want gratitude in that nature. I want love. I want my client to say, that's great work. Wow. And then you can raise rates anytime you want. The other question people have is, well, how do I set my rate? I don't know if that's a question you run across, Sarah. But
it's something that I talk about with people all the time. We have a bill rate calculator on our site that helps people to kind of think about some of the expenses that they might have, but there's so many different methods. Our site talks about a couple different ones, but yeah,
I'll give you a simple answer, okay? People ask me, how do I set my rate? I say, would you work for $100 a day? And they say no. I say, how about $50,000 a day? And they say, wow, that's too high. I say, okay, now you have the range. And basically, you just keep working and ask yourself, who is in this field that I would peg at my experience level, and what are they charging? And then you come something close to that. And so you feel comfortable with the rate. And then as time goes on, and it's fine to charge different things for different activities. The most highly leveraged consulting thing in the world is to give a 1-hour speech. People will pay anything for a keynote presenter. And so that's the rate thing. Now, the other part is you're helping them understand how much you need to charge with how many days can you bill in order your business works. And so that's just as rational. But I think the rate is more pegging yourself in the market. And it's an emotional issue. Everybody starts out, like you said before, undervalues what they do because they think their mother was right. Okay, and their mother wasn't right. You are fine. You're competent. You're the son she had in mind, despite how she might treat you. And so, rate is a part emotion, and just charge according to people who you call peers, and then hold your breath. And
we have so many questions on this. This is a very hot topic, which doesn't surprise me at all. Just maybe we'll address maybe one more, and then we can follow up with a few at the end, just so I can keep your cadence going, whatever you prefer. But this question I thought was kind of similar to a lot of that I'm getting. It's like, how do you avoid kind of wasting time with your clients who don't really have real expectations about rates unless you address it up front? Is this part of that kind of direct conversation?
Well, yes. The way you address people's wasting your time, I just ask them after a little while. As soon as something pops into your head, you got to take it seriously. So you're sitting there, or you're in some process, are they wasting my time? I just ask them, are you talking to other vendors? Or I'll ask them the question, look them in the eye if you're in the room. These days nobody's in the room, but look them through the phone and say, is what I'm doing of interest to you? I always ask halfway through every conversation, how is this going? Are you getting what you wanted? Is what I'm talking about important to you? How do you see this working? Are you interested in it?
Sounds like you don't assume very much.
I don't assume anything. All my assumptions are projections. All my assumptions are my anxiety thrown out onto the world.
That's true.
So I just ask them, No, even with this, I'm not sure I'm speaking, Sarah, to what the person had in mind. But I don't mind, and I'll tell them, look, the first day is on you. It's on me, rather. I'll meet with anybody once because I figure they have a right to know who they're dealing with. Now, if they want me to travel out of town, I tell them, you got to pay my expenses. I don't want to invest in you, all right? And so that's a screen to see if they're serious. And I say, well, other vendors come for nothing. And I say, that's great, period, icon, silence. I just don't want to be manipulated. I don't want to be manipulative. To me, telling you what a great deal you got is manipulative. Okay, it's a sales move. Sit on it. but I don't want to be manipulated either. And they say, well, and there's crazy things going out there. Well, we're going to do an auction. Some of the work we do, we're auctioning. We're setting up an auction to see which consultant best fits our needs and blah, blah, blah. And as soon as I hear that, I have to ask myself, how hungry am I? Now, if I'm hungry, I'll do anything, But if I'm not, then I say, well, so every time you get a warning sign, I took sailing lessons. And when this wind gets high, and you make the sail smaller, it's called reefing the sail, so your boat doesn't tip over. And so I asked an instructor once, I said, how do you know when the wind is too high? And he said, as soon as you ask yourself the question, is the wind too high? Bring down the sail, reef the sail. So if you have in your mind a question, are they playing with me? Are they commodifying me? Are they stringing me along? Are they taking from me with no chance of working together? Are they hustling me for my idea? Then you got to deal with it. And the way to deal with it is ask them a question, not an angry question. Just ask them, how is this going? Are you getting what you want? What are you learning from this discussion? Do you think working with us is a real possibility at this point? And then whatever they say, you say thank you. Every time people tell me the truth, I thank them for it. I don't argue with anybody. There's nothing to argue about. People say, what you're doing isn't realistic. I say, good point. Tell me more. So those are just thoughts.
Really, really interesting stuff. Well, we can get back to the presentation if you want.
I don't care.
And then I can come back to.
Well, no, I came here to be with you and your audience. I've seen the presentation, so I don't care what we cover.
Okay, well then I'll ask a few more. What do you think about, do you think it's ever appropriate to offer like pro bono services for businesses just being launched, or maybe for like maybe a nonprofit that you believe in or something like that? Is that a good way, is that ever a good move?
Yeah, I like that. You have to ask yourself, where's the reciprocity? So I have on the screen, contracting is decisive, okay? Contracting is an exchange of wants. And now, if I'm going to do work for nothing because the business is getting started, then I got to ask myself, what am I getting in return? Where is the reciprocity, the mutuality? Now, there's lots of things I can get besides money. I can get a commitment from them that when they get going, I'll be their consultant of record or their accountant or okay, or I can learn something I can't learn anywhere else. I'm happy to give a day away if I'm going to learn something and change my mind and my life and my practice. The question is, do you think you're being hustled or not? And you can set up some early hurdles. So people say, look, I'm just starting this business. I'm starting a PR firm, a marketing firm. A guy I know is starting up. I forget what he called it. And I'd say, that's great. I'm happy to work with you because you're starting, in the hopes that as you grow, I'll grow with you. Here's a couple of things I need to get started. And so I set up some hurdles. I say, could you send me such and such? Can you introduce me to one of your prospective clients, or if this was a consulting service firm? I'd say, what can I ask of them to see if they're serious about, or are they hustling me? And so think of what hurdles you can set up, and then if they don't deliver, then I get more cautious. I say, well, maybe something else is going on here. The point is, I once asked a guy in marketing when I was first starting. I said, how do you market? What is marketing? He says, well, marketing is interpreting demand. What's out there? What do they want? And I'd say, well, how do you go about that? He says, well, you're small, Peter. You don't have any money. So you're looking for people that are looking for you. And
that sounds good. Peter, we've had a lot of people that want to us to be more organized. So we're being and get back to the presentation and kind of do the questions a little bit later. So I'm not being a very good it's like herding cats here because I really want to hear all these answers, but I think it's a fair point that it's good to kind of see the points and then maybe dive in a little bit more. So duly noted, and I'll get us back on track here.
So it's hard to know what the track is. It's like, is the track what I had in mind, or the track is what people are listening for? But both things are true. So contracting is the point. All my failures have not been I didn't do that. That you can break it into phases. There's contracting, there's some discovery phase, what's going on here. There's some data collection, there's some feedback, here's what I see happening, there's some recommendations. So you kind of break it into phases. contracting is where most of the action is. Most of my failures were not caused because I did a poor analysis or drew wrong conclusions or didn't see what was happening. Most of it was because I got hungry and I wanted the business, and I knew there were problems in the beginning, and I ignored them because I didn't have the courage or the. And so contracting is decisive more than anything else. Now I'm trying to move this slide down. It's not moving. So this is that may be the end of my presentation here. Okay, contracting keys. Here's some thoughts, and then people can pick up what they want. Whatever people come to you with is never the real issue. It's like therapy, or coaching. People come to you with a question. So should I stay in my job or should I go? Or a client comes to you and says, first line supervisors, they don't know what they're doing. Middle management's this or that. Or we don't have a good process for getting the waste out of the business. Whatever they think I never take it as true. But there's something beneath the presenting problem. It's not the real issue. What you want from the client is kind of the essence of what's really happening. If they knew what the real problem was, they'd probably be able to solve it, unless you're just offering a kind of operational service, which is fine. I said before, the obstacles from the client, when they give you a hard time, give them one good faith response. Tell me a little bit about your background. Okay, I'll tell you about my background. And then when they ask me a second time, I know something else is going on. And so you want to give them one or two good faith responses and then say, what are you concerned about? You can make a living off a certain question. One of them is, what are you worried about? So when they give me a hard time, I say, what are you really worried about? What else are you worried about? And then when they tell me what they're worried about, they've been burned before, they don't have a budget, their boss is on the rear end, this thing is complicated, they're late, it took them a year to make up their mind and they want an answer tomorrow. I just take their side. I say, good point. Good point. And the more they can express what they're concerned about, the more they let go of their concern. I want to find areas of agreement. I don't want to argue with them about points of view. And I can't be wedded to my ideology. People say, even this contract, you got it wrong, consulting about something else. I say, yeah, good point. Of course, the world is more complicated than I can capture on a slide. But the next one is about saying no. If you can't say no, your yes means nothing. And you want to be in a world where people are committed to doing something that matters. That's why you're on your own. You're not just on your own to make a living. There's too much risk and vulnerability and anxiety. Because when you start your practice, you're looking at your calendar and the last part of the year is dead. It's empty. And you say, oh my God, what am I going to do? So to go through that, you want to do something important and with people that care about what you're up to. And so I have to be able to say no. I don't say no because I don't do things. I say no at the beginning of a conversation. And it's not no literally. It says, I don't know. Because people want magic. They want magic. They want you to solve something they've been struggling with for a while. Or they want a process. They want a turnkey operation. They say, can you give me here's a problem, here's a process we need implemented. Call me when it's done. Well, one of the things you want from them is to not view you as a magical creature. And so no means stop for a second, slow down for a second. And the final one, and we can pursue these, I'll keep going, is that gifts are more powerful than needs and deficiencies. Everybody wants to know what's wrong, and I show up to tell them what's working. So I just want to plant that idea. We can go more into it if you want to. But these are some kind of keys to contract. Resistance I've talked about. It's essential. If people don't have objections to you and what you're doing, they're not serious. I always think it's like, will you marry me? The other person says, of course, I've been waiting for you all my life. That couple's in big trouble. They're living in the land of enchantment, land of romance. Will you marry me? No. Ah, good. That's the client I'm looking for. You want to do something? I don't know. Good. So resistance means they're taking you seriously. You just don't want to argue with anybody. So empathy outweighs reason. People tell me all the reasons why I'm not appropriate. I say, boy, you have doubts about me, don't you? And they say, yes, I do. I say, well, I've got doubts about me too. So selling is not being confident. Selling is intimacy. It's connection. It's relatedness. There's nothing to argue about. Resistance is the normal reluctance to yield control. You're asking people, when you consult with them, to turn over to you something they thought was in their domain. It's hard to do that. And I don't care how routine. If you're an engineer and you fix machines of some kind, if they're coming to you to fix the machine, in some ways they're dependent on you, on your schedule, on how well you do it. Besides, you want them to learn how to do this for themselves next time. Half the problem with engineering stuff or mechanical kind of consulting is that it's operator error. They don't know what they're doing. And so they're giving up control. And so once you recognize that, then you chill a little bit. Say, don't worry about it. What they want to control is their story. And so that's why I don't want to argue with them. If people tell me, here's what it's like around here, I say, thank you. The other thing I would add that's not on the slide is if people want to brief you about the culture, so you're going to work with us as an accountant or a tech person, let me tell you a little bit of what it's like around here. I never listen to that. I maintain eye contact. I put a slight smile on my face to demonstrate support, and I could care less what they tell me. Because this is just their story. I don't trust anybody's story. A story is just a story. Even if I asked you, Sarah, tell me about your history, you tell me your history. I know you made it up. We all make up stories. All history. What I love is that in Russia, even the past is unpredictable. All right? So what that means is it's not cynicism. It's not that I don't believe you. It's just that the world as we speak it is a social construction. We have to make some sense out of the world, so we create a story to make it make sense to us. But I don't take it as true. And so would you like to meet some people? Sure, I like meeting people. But part of what you're there for is to come up with your own view of what this culture is like. And in the end, the last thing is a question. I used to do a lot of conflict resolution. I used to be in a lot of situations where people are arguing with each other. And it doesn't matter what I was doing, they just were arguing with each other. And so I would say, wait a second. Let me ask you a question before we go any further. Both of you disagree on this. Yeah, we do. And have a different point of view, right? Blah, blah, blah. And have a little story. It's good, blah, blah. I say, you got to make up your mind here. Do you want to be right, or should we work something out? And if people say, I want to be right, then I say, then go to court, for God's sake. Go whine. Go to your boss's bosses and play your trump card. Because I want to be the stance we are as consultants, not players, not managers, not surrogate managers. The stance we are is to help people work something out. And if you ask them this question, they're more likely to say, all right, I'd rather work something out. And then anything's possible. I've had people hate each other with 30 years of history between departments. And as soon as they say, I want to work something out, it doesn't take very long. So I'll just keep going, and then you stop. In terms of time, we got, another 10 minutes, huh? So let me.
Yep, you're good, and then we have a lot of questions to get to, but I wanted to give you a chance to get through the deck.
Let's get through the deck, okay? So this is just underlining what I'm saying. I want to be a partner, not a parent. I'm not there to judge anybody. If I find myself judging a client, you know what I do? I leave the room and tell them I have to go to the bathroom. And then once I get outside the door, I say, Peter, what the hell are you doing? Or if I'm on the phone or online, I say, excuse me, I have to get a glass of, what am I doing? Did I come here to judge somebody? I'm in the wrong profession. So you're not there to be right. You help them move their lives forward. The purpose of consulting is to help their life be more successful. I don't care how technical you are. You're there to help them have a process, have an answer, be able to move their business forward. Second point is that I always ask people when they complain about others, I say, interesting story, of course, interesting. What's your contribution to the problem? Half the clients I've had were contributing to the very thing that was causing them pain. This is not psychology. This is not therapy. This is friendship. And so if you have in your arsenal, if you have in your mind, write it down on a card at some point and say, well, what are you doing to contribute? What's your part in this? Because then you're treating them as if they're agents, as if they're players, as if they have some choice in their life. Because institutional political life produces whining. It produces complaining. Complaining never created any. And so part of what you're there for is to help them turn their complaints into requests and stop the whining and say, look, what's your part in creating it? And then the third thing is don't rationalize your anger. And sometimes you get mad at clients. Well, chill a little bit. Don't be righteous. Don't get irritated. People say, oh, I was just speaking truth to power. Baloney. They're not powerful, and what you said wasn't true. You know, this notion of speaking truth, they need to know, sit on it. Truth comes from God's lips, not yours or mine. And so say what you came to say, but don't do it because you're mad at them. This is dealing with resistance. Notice what's happening. What are you worried about? If people are angry, I say you seem angry. If they seem bored, I say you seem bored. If people are on their little devices, I say you spend a lot of time on your device. Where do you want to be, with them or with me? Now that's kind of aggressive, but that's what's behind it. And I say, are you into this? And then be quiet. So if somebody gives you a hard time, I try to say, here's what you're doing. You seem distracted. You seem in a hurry. You seem irritated. You seem vague. You seem to be going all over the place. And then I finish that sentence and stop talking and just look at it.
Yeah, just let it hang.
Let it hang. And then when they're concerned, I take their side. So relationship is the point. People make their bosses much too powerful. They make their clients too powerful. I've had clients whose office is nicer than my home. I'm going to act as an equal. I don't care what, not a superior. I'm going to act as an equal. People all the time want to rise and work with top management. I don't. If you want to see change, now the great thing about working with people at the top is it's a one-visit sale. And so the top's nice because if they agree, they're going to spend the money and hire you. The negative thing about the top is they're out of touch. You know, people say, wouldn't you like to work with top management? If I want to see change in the world, why would I want to go to the top? Change doesn't happen at the top. People at the top belong to the Institute for the very, very nervous. They want to hold on. You know, they're great people. They know their business like savants. If I want to know about the supermarket business, then I'm talking to the guy running the supermarket or the supermarket business. I'm at the right place. If I want to know how to get the middle of the people or process implemented or stop some of the stuff that's going on, upper middle management is where the action is. They have enough to be there. Power, that's who I want as a client, upper middle. If I need the top, they will get me there. I don't want to start at the top. There are people that are paying, you know, half people's questions are about jerks. And I would say, you're right. You're not paranoid. They are jerks. There is evil in the world. Stop talking about it. So the more I talk about difficult people, the more powerful I make them. So make them unimportant.
Yeah.
You know, connect a group of peers, people who whine about bosses. You're there to help peers work together. That the most powerful group in the world is a group that you're working with that cares about something, supports each other. They can have anything they want in the system. Because in the end, top management, upper middle, they want something to work. You may not like their style. So if you prove with a group of peers that what you're doing is valuable, you're in business for life. The other thing is that over the years, your clients will take you along with them as they move around. That's why the relationship matters. And half your clients came from places where you used to consult and they moved. And then the last thing on this one is just what I said about needs analysis. Everybody wants to analyze. You know, I do a lot of community work now. And everybody wants to analyze the problem as if a study ever changed the world. It's useful, but don't overdo it. And now that's my strong close. It wasn't that strong. Anyway, that's the domain. Okay, hopefully there's a back in the beginning. So let's take questions because we just got a few minutes.
Yeah, we have a lot. So for those that we don't get to, again, we'll follow up for later. I think I'll just go to, we just had one on what you just said. It said need analysis is overrated. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yes. People will spend a lot of money on analyzing the problem. I want them to spend more money on fixing it, organizing, bringing people together. And so people want the gap. Where do we want to be? And where are we now? What's the gap? And they do a gap analysis. That's not very powerful. Do it, but do it quickly. Don't spend a lot of time on it. The big question is, given what we see happening here, what do we want to do about this together? Also, always have in your mind, what are they doing right? People are more blind to their gifts. Systems are more blind to what they're good at than what they're weak at. They talk all the time about what's wrong with them. And doing a cause analysis and all this, all that's useful to a point. But so maybe the way to really build your practice is, even if you're doing technical stuff, even if you're a financial advisor, say, here's what you're doing right. Here's the gifts you have. There's more transformation in the world from amplifying what I'm good at than fixing what I'm bad at. And systems are the same. That's my best shot at a quick answer.
We have another one here. When you're engaging a potential client, is it more important to focus on what you have done as a consultant in the past or what you're going to do for them moving forward? Like, how would you, I guess, kind of lead into a conversation like that?
I would minimize what I've done in the past, partly because it's a location joke. If you weren't there, you really didn't know. The other person is going to have a very hard time really knowing what you did. You need some story about how you worked with people in the past. And so you need it, but don't bet on it. Bet on what, first of all, understanding what is the system, what is this client up to, and what are they up against, and then spend most of the time saying, here's how I think we can work together. Give me your thoughts. So you're always producing together an alternative future is the way to think of your practice. And data is underwhelming because everybody thinks it's marketing. A friend of mine says all marketing is pornography. That everybody in their marketing makes it sound like I saved them $500,000. I did this. You didn't do anything. Your clients did the work. All you did was support them and help them see a path to go. So for us to claim credit for past successes is a little bit of and so I would much more I like the future. What do you want to do? What are we going to create together? And I would ask the client, go ahead.
How about, okay, so just on the marketing, because that was such a funny note. Let's kind of transition into, a couple of people had some questions about how do they market themselves, and what are some best practices in direct contact marketing, getting to the right people that you want to work with, and finding bidding opportunities for soft services like team building and career assessments, things like that. Like, where do you go? Where do you start? How would you approach it?
I would say three places. One is your best leads are people that know you, and so I would look in your contact list on your cell phone and say, who are people that I can talk to about what's going on in the world. When I'm looking for leads, I'm not making cold calls. I might, but my sales call is always a set of questions as to what they're up against. And they say, why are you asking? I say, well, I'm starting to practice, and I'm trying to find out where I fit. I want to find out what I know how to do and what people are interested in doing. Because it's not that I'm making a sales call, like I said earlier. I want to see if we are right for each other. I want to make a good decision with the world. The second thing is interview people. Go find as many people you can. Ask them, what are you up against? What's your world like? In your domain. If you're looking for coaching business, go around and ask people, have you ever used a coach? What did you like about them? Why did you use them? When did you use them? How long ago? So research, asking questions is a very powerful relationship building. And then just be grateful in your response. And the third way is people need to see you. So get on every program you can. Put together a talk, 20 minutes at the most, about anything. And then whatever city you live in, there's 1,500 not-for-profits and groups that have meetings and they need a speaker. And so I went anywhere. I'll go anywhere. And every time I give a talk, I would say, look, if this makes any sense to you and you're in the audience, invite me, I'll come in. So I always used talks, presentations, facilitation, some way that people can sample you. It's not that you're going to sell anything from the podium. I never sold a thing and still wouldn't. But I want them to know who I am and see if my worldview, my way of being, my way of thinking about things is something that's a good fit for them. And giving talks, free, short, allows potential clients to sample you and see if there's a fit. And don't worry about how many people are in the audience. You know, there's nothing more admirable than have a rock group playing for 9 people and see them working just as hard as if they had 900.
Yeah.
So I don't care if 5 people in the room. I figure every room I go into, if I'm going to talk, there's a client there trying to decide, am I a good fit? And so numbers mean nothing. And every time I give a talk, I figure that's good. And then there's little details. We want to get granular. I always offer people something for nothing. If this interests you, there's a little write-up I did, a little video we've got. If you'll give me your business card or give me your contact information, I will get back to you. And that's a way of screening people. I'm always, in every sales process, there's a hurdle you set up to see if they're interested so you don't waste your time like someone else said. So give something away. So those are some thoughts about lead generation.
Yeah, really, really interesting. Gosh, I'm just trying to figure out which one to pick. How do you, I like this one because it's something I see a lot when I'm talking to independent consultants. And by the way, a couple people are asking about your book. And when we send out the email for the webinar, we'll definitely link people to it. But just so you guys know, it's called Flawless Consulting. And we will, Peter's website, yeah, let's just keep that up so people can check out because there's a lot of resources there.
And if there are questions or comments, either through Sarah or directly, of somebody, one of us will answer them.
Definitely.
On the phone, so
yep.
Yeah.
So how do you build confidence to charge what you know you're worth? So let's say you look at guides, you figure it out, and you kind of like, okay, I know what I'm worth now. I think I have a good idea. How do you build confidence to charge that when you're starting out and changing your own direction and pivoting?
Well, watch your language. Nobody ever is going to pay you what you're worth. All right? So don't use that language. I want to know. I want to charge a competitive rate. All right? And at every stage of your career, you'll have a different answer for that. Training pays more per day than consulting. Okay? Training and consulting pay more than preparing to train or consult. Workshops pay a little more. Speaking pays once you create your niche. And so you're always saying, what's the market? What will the market bear? Now, suppose the market will bear more than you're comfortable with. Suppose you think you're a $1,000 a day person, and you know people like you are getting $3,000 a day. What do you do with that? Okay. And I don't even know what rates are these days. What you do is you go to the mirror. And you look at yourself in the mirror and make sure nobody's listening, okay? and you look in the mirror and you say, my rate is $3,000 a day. And then you start laughing and giggling. You walk away, you come back, and you keep going back to that mirror until you can look at that mirror and say, I'm worth much. My rates are $3,000 a day. Silence, eye contact, no justification. People all the time say, why are your rates so high, to me? And I said, because people pay them. There's no reason behind it. There's no argument here. I'm not, why do you pay $170 for a bottle of perfume that costs $2.40 to make? Well, because people will pay it. People say, your rates are high. I said, I know they are. I wish they could be lower. I just don't take any, I don't have any affect about it. And I say, and sometimes you give them your highest rate, and half people say, phew, I thought you were going to be expensive. And then, it's like selling your house on the first day. You say, shit, I charged too little. But So rates is an emotional issue. And just find that mirror, look in the mirror, or a video camera. Okay, video yourself. As soon as you get off this program, get yourself on Skype, look at yourself, or whatever you can record, and say, my rates are $3,000 a day. Silence, eye contact. And do it again and again until you realize what the hell, what's the big deal. And then the world will tell you. Don't worry about it. The world says it's too much. And you say, well, tell me about that. Maybe it is too much. It's like not even I don't want to negotiate over rates. I'm willing to work for less if that seems what the market bears. Different countries have different rates. Next question, or you have to pull the plug on this, Sarah.
Okay. Well, I'm interested in what you're saying, and so okay, this is my moderator's now telling me it's the last one. Sorry, I'm into this, so I'm getting like thinking about it for myself. So, okay, last one. Let's see here. Do you have, other than your site, are there any recommended reading lists that you have on building professional services? Obviously we want to talk about your book and your site, but is there something else that has helped you or that you found really useful?
I would say two things. One is, Sarah, your organization, MBO. It sounds to me like you have all kinds. You can answer that question. Where do you go to build a professional service? The bigger question is, where do you go to deepen your understanding of yourself and the work that you're doing? And sometimes you can't do it within your profession. And so when I was doing team building, I was reading all about therapy. I was reading about what pearls and people were doing. So go out a little bit outside the profession, and I want to read in a way that deepens my understanding of the service, the world, the work that I do. If you've got very practical questions about building a practice, those books, I think, give you hope, but they don't give you methodology. You're going to have to construct your own way, your own way of talking about the thing. It takes a long time to know how to talk about your work in a way that makes sense to the world. And so that's why the little talks are useful. So I would say if you want a reading list, my book is fine. Thank you. What Sarah and MBO Partners does is that's all they do is help people start a practice. And then, but more importantly, start reading things of interest to you that are a little bit outside what you thought you were doing. And that's where your uniqueness will come, because you'll have your own way of constructing a story about the practice, a story about the world. And you have to tell it to people who don't know what you're doing other than your children. Your children will never understand what you do for a living. My daughters are 50 and 52 years old. They're starting to get a glimmer. And I realized later that it wasn't that they didn't understand it. They just didn't believe in it. So other than that, anyway, good fun, Sarah.
Well, we do have more questions, and we'll have to answer those after we're offline, but we've got them, and everybody putting their questions in. I see them, and we'll get them to Peter. And just remember, too, there's tons of resources on Peter's site. We're putting up a quick poll right now to let us know our next steps, if any. Just kind of self-select if you want MBO to reach out to you, Peter, both of us, or nobody, whichever's fine. In the spirit of Peter's directness, just let us know, and we'll follow up if you want us to. And Peter, I just want to thank you. This was a really fun presentation, very conversational. I felt like we just kind of sat in your office for an hour and kind of picked your brain, and we're getting a lot of great feedback that people really enjoyed it. So I just want to thank you for your time today and for lending us your expertise and your experience. It's clearly that you fought for it a lot, and a lot of your advice comes from real world experience here, because it's hard to have that kind of advice and experience without really walking the walk and going down the road. So just thank you so much, and thanks everybody for listening, and hopefully we'll see you on our next webinar that we'll have coming up shortly. We do them all the time, and we'll always let you know when we're going to do one. Thanks everybody. Have a great day. Thanks, Peter. Bye-bye, everyone.